Hi, I'm Chef Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we have a treat. We're going to be making raspberry red velvet whoopie pies. Whoopie! They are so delicious and sort of marshmallow-y with a homemade filling. You are going to love them if you can get past the chocolatey fudgy cake. Superb. So before we get started, I'd like you to click that notification button so you don't miss one video or tip that I have out there. So this is the lowdown on how the whoopie pie got named, all right? Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I hear it was from Amish country, and leave it to those wonderful Amish women making cakes. They had a little extra batter at the end of the day when they filled up their cake pans, so they baked them off on sheet pans and made little cookies. And then they filled them with some extra frosting for their husbands to take to work, wrap them up, and when the husbands found them in their lunch the next day, guess what they said? You're right, whoopee! So that's how it actually got named. That's what folklore says, okay? I can't swear to it. Okay, let's get started and make our beautiful whoopie pies. They're so easy, you have no idea. So I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I've lined 2 sheet pans with parchment paper, which you can't see now, but you will in a second. Now, first we're going to do our dry ingredients first so we get them all homogeneously blended. I have 3 cups of all-purpose flour. I have 1/3 cup plus 2 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder. Let me get that in there. That's where our chocolatiness comes in. All right, and then I have 1½ teaspoons of baking soda. Baking soda is a base, and the cocoa is an acid, so that's going to add to that reddish flavor that we love in the red velvet color, not to mention we are going to add a little something red food coloring. All right, and then we also have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm looking to make sure I'm getting all my amounts right because there's a lot in here. Now we're going to whisk these up because we do want our baking soda and our salt whisked up homogeneously. We just don't want to get any little pockets of chemical leavener or salt so somebody gets a salty flavor. That's very important when you're making any type of cake. So this is the creaming method of mixing. So in the meantime, I'm going to go over to my electric mixer. I have 1 stick of very softened, unsalted butter. It's going to go in my electric mixer, along with 2 types of sugar, 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, and 1 cup of packed brown sugar. I like dark brown sugar, but if you like the lighter, use the lighter. The darker just has a little more molasses in it. Whatever you decide, it's all good. All right, now with my paddle attachment, I'm going to get this going, and we're going to cream it until we get that sugar sort of beating against the butter and pushing air into that butter, because that's what we're doing. We're creating team players and an emulsion so these beautiful little whoopie pies rise up in the oven. So what we're doing is with these, the sugar is sort of like, you know, it's granular and it sort of forces air into the butter. The butter will lighten in color, although you're not going to be able to see it with the cocoa in there and the brown sugar. But once we get it going for a few minutes or 30 seconds or so, we just want to lighten it up. We're going to start adding eggs. That's the next stage of a mixing method type cake or cookie. So I have 2 eggs and 2 teaspoons of pure vanilla extract. I put it right in with the eggs. Don't crack your eggs in your electric mixer because you end up with shell. And not always, but who wants to take, who wants to take a chance? All right, so I'm looking pretty good here. All right, I'm going to put it on low speed so my eggs don't go flying. I'm going to take 1 egg, so when 1 yolk goes in, it's about right. I'm going to put that back on medium speed. I always cream on medium, okay? Get that egg and vanilla in there. And then in the meantime, I have 1 teaspoon of gel red food coloring to get that, that actual red velvet color. But we will get a little of that reddish tint because of the reaction between the cocoa and the baking soda. All right, getting nice and light and fluff. Now I want to add my other egg with the remainder of my vanilla. Now, the next stage in a creaming method cake or cookie, because they do cross over, is I have a liquid and I have my solid ingredients. So this is buttermilk, 1 cup of well-shaken buttermilk. So sit there and shake it up before you pour it, because sometimes it can settle. This is also acidic, so this will also react with the baking soda and also create carbon dioxide gas bubbles to help our beautiful little cakes rise, because that's going to make them tender and so delicious. So at this point, I'm going to lower my speed and I'm going to add my red food coloring if you're using it. And I am going to use about a teaspoon of it, put it right in there, and you want to get it mixed in. All right. Some recipes call for a gigunda amount. That's not a word, but it's my word. A gigantic amount of red food coloring. Why do you have to dye your intestines with red food coloring? So I think this is good enough. So before we actually start adding this, you want to get that red. The red is going. I'm going to get a big spoon, and I'm going to add a third, just eyeball it, about a third of my dry ingredients on low speed. Just get them in there so it's dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. You always want to begin and end with dry ingredients. And you want to do this on low speed because flour has gluten-forming proteins. And you don't want to create toughness in your cake. So the butter and the sugar will take care of the toughness because there are tenderizing agents. Yum, yum. All right, so once we have half of that in there, or a third of that in there, I'm going to add a cup approximately, just eyeball, of your buttermilk. Wait till you see this beautiful batter. It's gorgeous. Lightly red tinted, just delicious. Get that going. You don't have to stir it for too much. You just want things incorporated. Then go back to low speed. It's got a reddish hue. Another third. Get that in there, another third of our beautiful batter. And if you add a little more and it's not perfectly a third, don't worry about it. There's no creaming method police to come over to your house and get upset. So what you want to do is just get that going. And if you have to scrape down the sides, you can. I don't think I have to. I'm going to do that at the end. Low speed, add the remainder of your buttermilk. Okay, so that's in there. Once that gets incorporated, we're going to add the remainder of our third of our dry ingredients, and that's our batter. We're ready for the oven. I kid you not. So simple, so easy. Just make sure that your butter is softened. If your butter is softened, it'll make this whole process go easier. You don't want it melted, you want it softened. Because we're trying to aerate it, remember? We're trying to get that beautiful air bubbles in it so that it will help the rising of our beautiful little cakes. All right? So now I'm going to show you what this gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous reddish hued batter is going to look like. Or looks like right now. All right? Oh, it's so pretty. Look at that. Looky, looky. But don't lick it. Don't lick it. Save it for those glorious cookies. Oh, wow. So now I clean this off. Not with your tongue. Clean it off with a rubber spatula. Yeah, you don't do that. A lot of people like to eat raw dough. But it's not good because there's raw egg in it, so you really shouldn't. You really shouldn't. All right, so once you get all that off of there, all right, give it a bang. You're going to take your sheet pan with an ice cream scoop, like a 2 ounce, like a 1/4 cup ice cream scoop, And I always go around. This is what Chef Gail always does in her electric mixer. You go around and you make sure that all the dry ingredients are blended in. I see a little bit of flour on top. We can't have that. So we just go around, because mixers are notorious. They're a little like bumpy on the bottom. There's this little bump where the motor sort of fits in. So you just want to make sure, without over mixing, you just want to get that going. So I am going to space these out on 2 sheet pans, about 2 inches apart. So I'm going to put one on each side, and I'm not going to fill the entire amount because they get really big. All right, so if you want to make them smaller, use a smaller amount, or just take maybe half the amount. So these will make maybe 10 to 12 large whoopie pies. So if you have one there, I'd put one over here, so about 2 inches apart, because they will spread. All right. And if you want them bigger, make them bigger. Because remember, they need a pair. So if you have 10 to 12, it's going to make about 20 to 24. If you want to make mini ones, by all means, make mini ones. If you want to make even bigger ones, have at it. You're my type of person if you're making the big ones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill these up, not too close. You see that, 2 inches apart, straight down. So I might get 2, 4, 6, maybe 8 on each sheet pan. If I have to bake it again, I will do so. And these bake very, very quickly. They only take about 10 minutes. So I'm going to put them in at a 350-degree oven for 10 minutes. See you back. So we're ready to fill our whoopie pies. And what I've done is I've made a mountain frosting. You're going to see a fabulous video on that that can be used for a cake as well, or even a filling for another cake. Whatever you want to do, a sponge cake, whatever, but it's perfect, marshmallow-y, just delightful without being too cloyingly sweet for this delicious raspberry red velvet whoopie pie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swirl a little bit of red raspberry preserves in here. And I like the seeds in it. If you don't like the seeds, you know, get the seedless. But just stir it around a little bit, microwave it if it's too stiff. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to sort of drizzle a little bit on top of your mountain frosting. Just a little. And you're not going to stir it in because we want to see the marbleization. We want to see the beautiful raspberry. All right. So what we're going to do is we're leaving our whoopie pies that have cooled beautifully and they're luscious looking. So we have them flat side up. And I have an ice cream scooper. Again, this is about 2 ounces, about 1/4 cup. And you're just going to go right through. Oh, look at this. And you're just going to, isn't that gorgeous? And you're going to take this. You see that, the raspberry. And you're just going to gently, oh, look at that. Did you see that? I have to admire it. It's so gorgeous. And it smells so fudgy. So I'm going to go through again, go through with a little bit of the raspberry preserves, put a big dollop on there. Oh yeah. And if you don't like raspberry, use either another jam or leave it out. Okay? This is just my riff on it. Oh, it's so beautiful. I think that one's mine because it's really big. Oh, look at this. So you just keep working it, okay? And then you're going to put, I have to do this while you're watching. And look how beautiful and stiff this mountain frosting is. And you can store it in the refrigerator. And when you cut it in half, it'll be even more marshmallowy. But I think it's scrumptious. So I hope you make this beautiful whoopie pie recipe, this raspberry red velvet whoopie pie with this beautiful mountain frosting. I hope you become a subscriber. Till next time.